Hello everyone and welcome to 9-inch Charge. Today I'm talking to you from my hobby desk. I'm just putting the finishing touches on some Free Guild Guard. I'm getting these painted up in preparation for a one-day tournament at Curtain Games. And as I'm doing this, I just thought I'd talk you through my top 5 things to remember in preparation for an event or tournament. Just before we get into it, if you enjoyed this video, please drop it a like. It would really mean a lot to me and it does help people find the channel. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe. But without further ado, let's get started. The first thing that I always think of before signing up to an event is, what is my expectation of this event? And in that I mean, what do I want my experience to be? Do I want to explore the narrative of my army? Do I want to play super competitive and try to win? Or do I want to roll some dice with some new people, make some new friends, and just enjoy myself? For me, thinking about this event that I've got coming up in Curtain, I'm just thinking, AOS 3 is fairly new. I've not played loads of games of it yet, and this is a great opportunity to see loads of different armies, play 3 games in one day, have a great time, and just learn what my army does in AOS 3. To that end, I've not taken a list that I would usually take. I've taken a bit of a mix. So my expectation isn't that I'll win the event, but I do hope that, I at least come middling, to be honest. I want to be able to give people a good game, a good run for their money. I do have a list up my sleeve that I think is a bit more techy and a bit more competitive. And I'll be practicing this and playtesting it on the road to Reading Warfare in November. But for now, I do just fit into the category of, let's play some games, let's have a great time, let's see what my army does, and take it from there. Sometimes, however, not all events do meet our expectations. I do know some people who in the past have thought they've signed up for casual or narrative events and then end up coming across really competitive gamers. But I think as the day progresses or as the weekend progresses, the scoring system should mean that you find your level and those really competitive players can go and play each other, and then you can find some people who are more your level, more casual, kind of like that. So just try not to let a single game that isn't quite what you expected ruin your event. And also just be respectful of other people's expectations, because going in, their expectations might not be quite the same as yours. The second thing I want to talk about is the tournament organisers' expectations. Obviously, they've put a huge amount of effort into creating the event, managing the event, hosting the event, and trying to make it work cohesively and as best as possible for all players. To help them with this, they would have issued you with a tournament pack. The best thing you can do is make yourself familiar with this, and just give them a shout out if there's any questions or queries that you have. Usually I find myself shooting the TO a message about my army. As some of you would have seen from my army showcase video on Living Cities, my army does have some alternate models and some conversions. And so far, every event I've been to, the TO has been absolutely fine with them and embraces that kind of thing, if that's what you want to do with your army, so long as the model is still representative and on the same base size and things like that. The tournament pack is also going to give you an idea of how the day or weekend is going to progress, what time your games will be, what the scoring system is, when you'll be able to stop for lunch, and it might even tell you the scenarios that you're going to play. This information will be especially handy for your preparation when thinking about list building, and it will give you the scenarios for your practice games in the run up to the event. Which takes us on to our next topic, is know your army. There are so many different kinds of allegiances and sub-allegiances in Age of Sigmar now, it can be really difficult to keep on top of what does what. And there are a few that we've seen crop up that it's best to know what they do. I'm thinking about Petrifex and Hagnar and things like that. And if you do come across a faction you've not played against before, don't be afraid to ask questions of your opponent. I invariably ask questions along the line of, and is this the last spell that you're able to cast this turn? Or, and what's the shooting range of that unit and what's their movement, so I can start to gauge threat ranges and things like that. And be prepared for your opponent to be asking you these sorts of questions as well. But the absolute best allegiance and sub-allegiance you can focus on is your own. A player who knows their own army inside and out will invariably undo someone who has taken the most competitive top tier list but doesn't know how to play it. They say practice makes perfect, and the more games you have with your army, the better understanding you'll have of it. There are also some really great free resources available to you to help you with your understanding of your army and knowing what happens in what turn. War Scroll Builder now prints the stats of your units alongside them, letting you know their move, their save, their wounds characteristic and their bravery just at a quick glance. You can also import your list into aosreminders.com, and this will tell you everything that your army does from unit to sub-allegiance in every turn of the game in an easy readable and printable format. For a more detailed description on how these resources work, check out my video on free Warhammer Age of Sigmar resources to improve your planning, playing and enjoyment. Link in the description. The last thing that knowing your army inside and out will enable you to do, and actually the fourth section in this video, is speed up your games. We all want to be able to play our games to conclusion in every round. And on top of knowing your army and what it does and how it plays, there are other things you can do to help you speed up your games. This really could be a whole video in itself, but I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that I think are useful. So the first one is going to be take your crib sheet with you. We've already mentioned AOS reminders. You're not going into your book every 5 minutes. Bring tokens with you or something like that. You know, when you're measuring deployment, don't measure every single time. Just say, look, this is 9 inches back. Measure it off for some tokens, and you know exactly where your deployment zone is. Use movement trays. I absolutely swear by movement trays. I live by movement trays. I cannot rate them enough for moving your troops around. Move it if you've got a big block of 30 guys or something like that, you know, or maybe something like you might have 60 grots. Moving them one at a time just isn't acceptable for tournament etiquette, so you need to invest in some movement trays. Other things I swear by, I've got a measuring device which is 1 inch on one end and 3 inches on the other, and 9 inches long, and that's got all the measurements that I really need for my army. So if I deploy off the sides, I have to be 9 inches away from an opponent, or if I summon, there's my 9-inch side. To be in coherency, I need to be 1 inch away. I've got the 1 inch side, and to make sure I'm not in combat, or if I am in combat, just to measure, I've got the 3-inch side. Who needs tape measures, eh? And lastly is dice. I do know people who take different coloured dice. So for example, they might have 10 blue dice, 10 green dice, 10 white dice, and then if you just need to pick up, you know, 10 dice or 20 dice, you just know exactly how many you've got just by looking at the colours straight away. Little things like that can really help speed up your games. And the last thing I want to talk about today is the player's code. Now you can find this on page 247 of the rulebook. It includes some things that we've already talked about today, and it expands on others and generally just outlines common courtesies when playing your games. Some of the things in the player's code I think is a little bit of a shame that it has to be outlined. Things like always tell the truth and never cheat. These things go without saying. But I think it all essentially boils back down to what we're saying at the beginning. Just be aware of your opponent's expectation for the game, you know, as well as your own. Be willing to help them out with any questions they may have about your army, and I'm sure they'll be the same with you. And let's try to have as much fun together playing as we can. And if the dice and things don't go away, you know, this is just the way the game is sometimes. One of the rules is to never complain about your bad luck or your opponent's good luck, and we all love to complain about the dice gods. But I think as long as we do it in a friendly way and we're not really letting it get on top of us or spoil someone's enjoyment of the game, then that's the main thing. I'll let you know how the event goes for me down in Curtin. The dream is to come back with 2-1, but to be honest, it could just go any way. I wish you all the best of luck in any events you've got coming up if you are able to go to them and it's safe to do so. Let us know in the comments any other tips or tricks that you've got for preparing for tournaments. The more we can share, the more helpful it will be for other players. As ever, thank you very much for watching. This has been 9-inch Charge, and I'll catch you next time.